Here's what you can do in order to improve battery life on Google Pixel 10. First, we're gonna open settings and then proceed to battery settings. In here we can find the battery saver, which perhaps should not be really used all the time, but at least when the battery is running low and you want to save it a little bit. This will definitely help you to do so. There's also extreme battery saver that you can use as well, and also schedules and reminders that can also be quite useful. By default, the schedule is enabled. We have this option set to 20%, which is pretty decent. Of course, you can enable it and set it higher if you want to, so that the battery saver can be enabled sooner. And there is also automatic turn off at 90%. Besides that, we have adaptive battery, which should be enabled. I can always recommend you using this option. And if we go to battery health, we can also find quite a bit of options, more precisely just this one, charging optimization, which is also quite essential to use in order to save the battery a little bit and keep it in a healthy state for as long as possible. So we can use charging optimization, and by default we use adaptive charging. But if possible, if you don't find it too annoying, you can limit the battery to 80%. And by doing so, you will definitely keep the battery in a healthy state for as long as possible. The reason why it is 80% is because most batteries on smartphones, nowadays at least, are built in a way that the ideal percentage for them is between 20 and 80%. So you start charging at 20 and stop at 80. And there we go. Now, besides that, what you can also do is, if we go back over here, you can we can go through battery diagnostics, and you can use these tooltips as well in case you need additional information beside this video. But we're gonna move on actually. So we can go back to the settings, and we can proceed to display and touch. And over here we can also find a bunch of different options that can drain the battery, or the other way around. When they are disabled, they can drain the battery. For example, we have the adaptive brightness, which is of course recommended to use. So you can turn it on. There is always on display, that of course also increases battery usage, as we can read over here. So if you don't really make use of always on display, then it is actually recommended to turn it off. If you have long screen timeout, then this can also drain the battery, just like these two options below. Essentially, if you keep the display enabled for as long as possible or more than it should be enabled, then of course the battery will be drained much quicker. There is also the dark theme, which is actually enabled by default, and I can understand that some people prefer the light theme, but in that case I can recommend you using the schedule that allows the dark theme to be enabled and disabled at a given time. Essentially, dark theme also allows you to save the battery a little bit. We can also read that over here. Dark theme uses a black background to help keep your battery alive longer. Besides that, we have the screensaver, which also drains the battery a little bit, but of course it is only mostly used when we are charging our phone, but it is definitely recommended to not use it if you don't use it at all. Besides these options, there's of course the smooth display, which allows you to use 120 Hz refresh rate, and I can understand using this option. Me personally, I also prefer to use it, even though it increases battery usage. It is just better experience in general. So while I'm not saying that you should disable this option, I can understand why you use it, because I do so as well. I just have to inform you that of course it also increases battery usage, so you have to keep that in mind. And then there is also one more thing that I missed actually. In display and touch, we're gonna go to lock screen, and over here we have now playing, which also uses the battery quite a bit. So if you don't really use that feature that often, you might want to turn it off, because it doesn't have to be enabled all the time probably. And there is also the song search feature in circle to search that can be used as an alternative, and probably a better choice because it doesn't drain the battery that much. Now we're gonna go back to settings, and this time we're gonna go to location. Over here, if we go to location services, you should be able to find Wi-Fi scanning and Bluetooth scanning, which I recommend disabling. Even if there is an instance where you need these options to be enabled, simply your phone will inform you about this, so you can turn it on just for the short while when it's needed, and then I can still recommend you turning it off afterwards. these features can actually, these two scanning features can actually drain the battery quite a bit, so I can recommend you disabling them. Now, besides these options, we can also go to network and internet. I also want to point out this option, hotspot and tethering. If you share your internet quite a bit, it is recommended to not always have the hotspot enabled, so make sure that it is not always running. And the same can be said about any of these tethering options. There is also adaptive connectivity, which extends battery life and improves device performance by automatically managing your network connections. So you might consider using this option. And I believe if we go to the internet, and if we go to network preferences, we have this option, turn on Wi-Fi automatically, which of course can result in quicker battery drainage. So you can turn this option off if you don't really need to use it. Of course, besides that, we have these features like the Wi-Fi, the mobile data, Bluetooth, NFC, and so on and so forth. And all of these features can also be, of course, disabled when you are not using them at a given moment. So for example, if you are outside and you don't really use Wi-Fi at the specific moment, you can just go into the internet over here and you can disable Wi-Fi. And on the other hand, if you are at home, I believe you don't really need to use mobile data if you have access to Wi-Fi, of course. So you might want to turn off mobile data while you are at home. The same can be said about Bluetooth. If you don't use any device, if no device is connected right now to your phone and you don't use that, then of course you can just disable Bluetooth and not use it at all until, of course, you need to turn it back on to use something like earbuds, for example. So that is essentially it. Additional features can also drain the battery, for example, apps, of course. If you have an app that provides you, let's say, a live animated wallpaper or dynamic wallpaper, this can drain the battery a bit as well. You can also check which batteries use the most, which apps use the most battery by going back to battery settings. Over here we can open battery usage. And here we have the list, so you can consider restricting access or battery usage. Over here you can optimize the battery usage or even disable background usage completely so that the app is not draining the battery that much. And I think I mentioned everything. In case I missed something, you can let me know in the comments so that others can see that as well. Thanks for watching, leave a like and subscribe.